Okay, good afternoon, and welcome to the Service Operations Insight Community Webcast. All participants have been placed on mute. We will allow for questions at the end of the conference. You can also ask questions from within the Q&A panel on the WebEx. We will do our best to answer all questions during the hour. In the event this is not possible, since we do only have an hour here today, we will be sure to follow up on all questions within the community transcripts. This call is being recorded, and of course the replay will be made available, as always, from within the community. We have a nice agenda lined up for you today. First up is Stephen Sheldon, our User Community President. Stephen, I pass to you.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, depending on where you are. We've got a good lineup today of some fun things to talk about. Melissa is going to be talking about some new community features and what's going on with the communities. And then we're going to be having Mitch Engel talk about SOI 3.2 update that was recently released, which we just installed here and went very smoothly, as well as what's coming up soon in SOI. And then we're going to have SOI services talking about the SNMP connector and SOI 3.3 beta. Now that SNMP connector is one that we've been getting a lot of questions about. So I definitely encourage those questions to continue during that presentation here as well. And hopefully everyone's going to get as much as possible out of that one. And then lastly, Dave Hayward is going to be talking about SOI, CA World, which I just finished booking myself and look forward to meeting as many of you as possible there. Hopefully we'll have some good time to do that. Right, so yeah, throughout any of this, if anyone has any questions, we encourage that as much as possible. We can save them for the end or use them Q&A during this. So, Melissa, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay. Hey, my name is Mitch Engel. I'm going to provide a quick update from the product management perspective. Thank you, Stephen, first off, for the introduction and now I'll continue in terms of the update. So, Melissa, if you could advance the slide, please. I'd like to get right into it in the interest of time. I know we have a large section, as Stephen mentioned, on the SNMP and customized integrations, which I'd like to give as much time as possible to Kevin, as well as provide time for Dave Hayward to provide his CA World review. So, Melissa, if you could advance for me, please, that would be great. Melissa?
Yeah, I did advance. Do you not see
it? I don't. It seems so it just dropped. So I'll have to do it from memory.
Hold on, let me try passing the ball to you, Mitch.
Okay. I apologize for the technical difficulties, team.
Okay, Mitch, you are now the presenter.
Okay, great. So let me share my desktop with the presentation again, please. I apologize for the delay.
While we're working on getting that sorted out, I did want to thank everyone for all the ideas that have been being posted recently to the community. I've been seeing a lot more ideas lately, and that's really good to see.
We see you now, Mitch, bottom right. Yep, you're good.
Okay, great. Okay, again, thank you, Stephen. And to all, I very much apologize for the delay. So I'll try to make my update quick, and I'll turn it over to Kevin then, who will go through the bulk of the presentation. And Kevin, I urge you, please, it's a very important, critical that we're time conscious and make sure that we have enough time so Dave can present the CA World updates. I'll be brief. Again, I'd just like to announce that we have the recently released CA Service Operations Insight 3.2 CU3, Cumulative Update 3, available now. I strongly urge you to download, and Stephen, thank you very much for telling the user community your experiences with CU3 as well. Again, just to follow up, our goal is to provide a consistent approach for keeping our client base up to date with feature functionality as well as cumulative maintenance. So, and we'll follow this path, and our goal is to deliver these updates that provide value add every quarter. And again, the requisite is only the base version of the product, or any other prior version, any other prior CU is equally acceptable, and it'll go on top and supersede any of the updates prior. Okay, what do we have in CU3? We're very pleased to announce that we have a certified integration with CA NIMSoft Monitor now. So, and as well accompanying that, we have a new GA version of the connector. It's a separate download, of course, from CU3, but it's a certified GA version of the NIMSoft integration, and we'll be looking at establishing or enhancing the functionality and extending our integration with the NIMSoft product line as much as possible, and practically every quarter. So every quarter, look forward to a continued improvement on that integration and enhancements related in that area towards integrations. Accompanying the connector, we also have a new simplified Catalyst container. That's our go-forward strategy in terms of containers for the connectors. There's a lot of performance improvements and scalability and in general simplistic ease of use for deployment and install. We also added back DR support with our CA ArcServe RHA, and that's included in our documentation. So if you're interested in a distributed high availability system, you can do that or implement that. It's certified with CA ArcServe, as I mentioned. We've also certified against ServiceNow Dublin, and there are current enhancements to the existing integration that are in the works, and we'll support them in advance of the connector going GA. We've included support for the new versions of EAM. So if you have 12.5 or 12.5.1 operating in your environments with other products, we now operate with those versions and are wholly compatible. Of course, we've done some additional solutions and connector certifications, as we'll do with every update, in our continuing and ongoing effort to make sure that we do as much end-to-end testing and solution validation as possible. And of course, consistent with all the cumulative updates, all of the current maintenance to date is included in that update. So when you apply the CU, you'll not only have these additional features and capabilities, but you'll also be up to date in concerning all of our recent maintenance. So quickly moving on, just a quick mention to the product roadmap. Again, we're trying to establish a regular, predictable cadence for our deliverables. And our quarterly updates, or our cumulative updates, are done quarterly, and you see those, and you can see our history over that is every quarter we're doing a deliverable. And this is what we're striving to in terms of predictability. So as you can see, we've just released 3.2 CU3. What's on deck and in the works right now, as we kind of gave a little bit of a preview on our last user community update, is our full major release of SOI 3.3. And you can see I speak about futures in half year. That's a restriction that CA provides, so we have to speak about what's coming in half year increments. So I've grouped 3.3 and then CU1, but you'll see we'll continue a major release, and our goal is to provide a full major version of SOI in a yearly cadence, but those continued cumulative updates in a quarterly cadence in the interims. So that's where we are from an execution strategy in terms of what we delivered. And you can see on the right-hand side, after the "You Are Here" arrow is where we're going. So that's all I have. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Kevin. Kevin, rather than changing the ball, if you could just give me the heads up, I'll advance the slides for you when you tell me, and that's in the interest of time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mitch. Okay, so I wanted to talk about two halves of my presentation today. The first half is the SOI 3.3 beta, which is in progress, and I just wanted to, Mitch, if you can advance the slide. Okay, so the beta program is underway. We have 16 clients that are currently testing, and the beta is going to run through the end of the month of October. So there's a lot of excitement around this right now. All clients are currently actively testing, and I just wanted to draw attention to some of the new features that are receiving a lot of positive feedback, just to make everybody aware of what's coming with 3.3 and to prepare you. So I'm going to go into just a selection, just a subset of the new features that we're getting some really nice feedback on to make everyone aware, and that is the pending clear alert state, the increase of user attributes from 5 to 10, the update alert action, escalation action timer, and we'll go into each one of these in more depth. And we're currently in progress of creating knowledge documents on these new features that we're going to be posting to the SOI community in order to enable SOI community users and make you aware of what's coming so that you're ready to upgrade. Mitch, if you could advance, please. Okay, so the first new enhancement that we're getting really great feedback on is the new pending clear alert state. So this new feature was born out of a use case that clients were asking for. When an alert clears, so instead of removing that alert entirely from the SOI console, is there a way that it can be updated to reflect a normal severity in the console, but continue to be treated as an alert in terms of being able to be actioned upon, being able to be annotated against, being able to be viewed within the SOI console. So this pending clear alert mode is introduced with 3.3, and when an alert is cleared now within SOI, it's not removed completely, it's grayed out, so it's still visible within the SOI console, and it's not impacting the services, so it's exempt. So this is a new configurable global property called pending clear mode that's enabled through the admin UI, and when cleared alerts are received from the domain connectors, they're put into a pending clear mode before finally being cleared by the user. So alerts that are marked for pending clear, they won't impact the service, so in that way they're marked as exempt, but they're still visible. So they'll be grayed out, and they can be transferred between queues, they can be annotated, they can be escalated, they can be actionable, but it allows you to view those alerts that have been cleared by the domain manager, and that's really beneficial to NOCs in which they want to see the alerts that have been cleared. They want to place them in, say, a cleared alert queue so that they can review them. They can see, when the alerts have been cleared before finally performing the clear action themselves as a manual task. Mitch, can you advance, please? Okay, so here's a slide that demonstrates that pending clear alert state. And you can see I have a critical alert on this CI, MEEKE02-W7. And I can see that alert within the SOI console. I can see the alert in the lower pane. With pending clear mode set, with that global property set, Mitch, if you can advance, please. When that clear alert is received now by the manager, you can see that my CI has gone to normal as a result of that clear. And in the lower pane, I can still see that critical alert that's been cleared, but it's grayed out, and you can see that it's non-impacting to the service, so it's exempt. So this is really powerful. It allows me to see what alerts have been cleared. You can create your alert queues so that the pending clear is a property. So that's property that you can use within your building of alert queues so they can be represented the same way, but you can also have a pending clear for spectrum alerts, pending clear for alerts greater than one day. You can construct those criteria and use pending clear as a property. Next slide. And you can see the new root cause has shifted to the other CI as a result of that clear. Okay, another new feature is the new update alert action. So this is a really powerful feature in that it allows us to update properties of an alert through escalation policy in action. So within 3.2, you could update certain properties of an alert. We could update an annotation, we can update the assignee property, but that was a manual task. Now, within the alert escalation actions, there's an update alert action. So as a result of criteria being met, we can perform automated annotations to an alert, automated assignments to an alert, and you can see in these use cases. If an alert with the severity of critical is acknowledged, I want to update an alert annotation with the alert assignee. So when that escalation policy kicks in as a result of an acknowledgement, I want to automatically update that alert with an assignee. I want to draw attention to the last one here, the auto queue reassignments. And this is a really powerful one in that we can update user attributes. So we can update any one of the now 10 user attributes that are available for update within 3.3. We've expanded that number from 5 to 10. And using the escalation policy, we can say if the age of an alert exceeds this many minutes, I want to update a user attribute with this value. And that's really powerful in that now we can do we can move alerts between alert queues time-based. So you can have a queue now that says, show me all critical alerts greater than 1 day. And we can create an escalation policy that that performs an update to an alert property after 1 day. And then we can use that within the alert queue criteria to do alert queue population. Mitch, if you can move to the next slide. And I want to show those properties that are available for update. So again, this is really very powerful in terms of being able to automatically update these properties through escalation actions. So we can update, we can perform acknowledgement, we can pass in annotation text, we can assign, we can update the ticket ID. But what's really powerful, and I think that what a lot of our beta testers are getting a lot of value from is the ability to update those alert user attributes through the escalation actions. In the past, we could update user attributes, and there's a lot of value behind that, but that could only be done through the policy. So you would put your user attribute, you would define what populates the user attribute through your connector policy. Now we're updating that within escalation policy action. So we're doing dynamic updates based on escalation policies and actions, and that's really powerful. Okay. And just two more I want to hit before we move on to the SNMP connector stuff is the new escalation delay timer. So this new enhancement allows us to put an escalation delay timer on our actions, and this is really meant to accommodate this use case where we have alerts that flip-flop between severities, between normal and critical, before finally settling down on one side or the other. So if the alert causes an escalation action to be called as a result of this flipping and flopping, that could be a notification to support before it finally settles down. So this delay in triggering the escalation action for a specified time is what we have with the escalation delay timer. So what happens is when the action is kicked off, we have the ability to specify a time in which the criteria is reassessed. And if the alert still meets that criteria, then the escalation action will be triggered. So if we don't have a timer, the alert that meets the criteria will trigger right away. So this prevents the false alarms from occurring that result in escalation actions. Next slide. And here's a look at it in a screenshot. So we have our alert escalation policy editor open here, and I've specified my action, which is to send an email but you know, if I get an alert that something has gone critical, and I know that you know, it's flipping and flopping back and forth, say between normal and critical, you know, I want to be sure before I get that email that it's truly critical and it's not kind of right on the edge of a threshold. I can specify that wait time of 10 minutes, and after 10 minutes it will be reassessed. And if it's still critical, then I will receive the email. And that's how the escalation action delay timer works. And another new feature is the expanded token set for escalation actions. So within escalation actions, we now have the ability to pass in additional parameters. So we can pass in these properties to, say, emails, user alert attributes, CI user attributes, and again, we've expanded that set from 5 to 10, doubling the amount of user attributes that are available to you. And those of you that are currently using user attributes, you know how powerful they are in terms of enriching the CI and enriching the alert, providing more value in terms of, you know, detail in the CI or detail in the alert. We can also pass in the action name and the policy name, so you know which policy and which action performed that email if we did pass these parameters to the email. And we can also pass the alert ID. And also what we've been getting a lot of good feedback on is the Service Console UI URL, that last property. And if that's passed within an email, we provide a link back directly into the SOI console in the context of that alert. And Mitch, if you go to the next slide, you can see that I'm taking advantage of these new properties that are available for escalation actions in the context of this email. So I'm passing in the policy name, passing in the action name, and I'm passing in the Service Console UI URL. And if you click next, you'll see that as a result of this email being sent, I can see email sent by, and I can see the escalation policy, in this case, action taken by user, SAM user, and this was a manual action that was called from the SOI console. And then I have a link back within the email, so I can launch directly into the SOI console in the context of that alert. Next slide. Okay, and finally, we have improved connector startup time in FQD and Lookup. So this was a very nice improvement in terms of the way we do FQD and Lookup during connector startup to obtain DNS names of the CIs during transformation. So, you know, in the past there was some performance. If we could not resolve the DNS name for certain CIs, we would see performance hits on that, and that would be experienced in the form of long startup times for the connectors. So we've addressed that in this release, and we basically parallelized the FQD and lookups, so that results in much faster connector startup times. Next slide. And here's just a couple of charts that demonstrate the results of that. We have on the chart, on the higher chart, a high percentage of DNS names that are resolvable. Even with that, we see higher, we see a faster startup time for the connectors. But on the lower chart, where we have a low percentage of DNS names that are resolvable, we see that the difference between 3.2 and 3.3 is very noticeable. 3.3 connectors start up much quicker due to those performance improvements we've made. Okay. So I just wanted to kind of draw attention and make everybody aware of some really exciting new features that we have with 3.3, and the 16 clients that we have within the beta program are really providing great feedback. I have about 20 minutes left before I pass it over to Dave, so I wanted to now take the time to do an SNMP connector deep dive. So on the last community call, we talked about the SNMP connector at a very high level. I want to drill down in more depth on this call and show you what I do if I go to a client or a client comes to me and says, I have an SNMP, I have a product that sends SNMP traps, there's no connector for it, let's create some policy and let's get this going. And this is how I would go about it in the step-by-step procedure. So SNMP connector, again, for those of you that aren't aware of the SNMP connector, it's a generic data collection connector. Basically, in a nutshell, it receives traps from any SNMP capable product, and it basically transforms those traps. And it receives them, it will parse out the bar binds, and the connector policy, its job is to put those bar binds together and construct CIs and alerts from those, basically to map the bar binds to the fields that are required for CI creation and for alert creation. So each domain manager, for each one, will create a separate connector policy that basically dictates those var binds to SOI attribute mappings. The policy is XML based, very flexible in terms of being able to parse var binds, to be able to normalize data and do mappings, and you'll see how easy it is as we walk through this. And let's click next. Okay, so here's a step-by-step that we'll walk through right now. And basically, this is how I would go about creating SNMP policy. First thing is to direct traps from the data source to the SNMP connector. So we have traps being received by the connector. The second step would be to turn on debugging to capture that raw trap data within log files. So once we turn on the debugging, we'll be able to see all the var binds and all the var bind values, and we'll be able to determine which ones are important to us, what var binds are important for our CI creation and our alert creation. And we'll do that in the third step, reviewing those values. In the fourth step, we'll decide how we want our CIs and our alerts created from the traps. And then we'll actually write the policy out. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, and step one is pretty self-explanatory, is to direct traps from your data source to the connector, set the connector as a trap destination, and so we start receiving traps, and we can start looking at that information. Next slide. Okay, so now we have traps coming into the SOI console. We want to turn on debugging to view that trap information. And those of you that have worked with SOI for a long time, you know that to turn on debugging, the log4j.xml within the SOI resources is where we do that. And there's two sections that we would want to uncomment. And I have it highlighted here, the raw entity debug files and the published entity debug files. So once we uncomment those sections, we'll be able to see the raw information that is sent from the trap by the trap and received by the connector, so that's logged. And then we can look at the bar bind data, and we can see all the raw information the trap sends over, and that will help us in writing the policy. So that trap data, once we do turn on this debugging, and there's no need to restart the connector, that is logged to this file, the connector name _ alert _ raw file, and we'll look at that now. Next slide. So we've turned on debugging, and this is what we'll see within that log file. So basically, if you see here, we see all the var binds, and you can see in the largest red square that I have here, this is varbind.10. You can see it at the very top. And what it presents to us is basically looks a lot like what we would see in alert message or alert summary within SOI. So that's something that we want to use when we build our policy. That's a valuable bar bind to us. So basically, we want to look at this log, we want to look at the bar binds that are presented to us, and we want to basically make a note of those that are important to us and those that we want either in the alert or as a property of the alert or as a property of the CI. And there are some that you'll always use. One of those, and I have them listed on the right here, are SNMP_enterprise. So that's basically the product that sends the trap, the ID. So that's used for our classification section within the policy. So we know what product is sending the trap. That's always used. The var binds are going to hold the bulk of what makes up the properties of the alert message, the alert summary, the alert severity. Those are required fields for SOI alert, and those will almost always be found in a var bind. Var binds hold a wealth of information. So you'll want to kind of go through your var binds and say, oh, that's where my message is. Oh, this is an indicator of my severity. Oh, this would be a great property to include in the user attribute. So you kind of want to pick apart those var binds and see which ones are valuable to you. And finally, the SNMP_agent. That's one that we always use as well. That SNMP_agent will almost always have an IP address that holds the IP of the server that sent the trap. So when we, within the policy, create our CI, we'll always use that IP to set the primary DNS hostname, the IP address. So basically, SNMP enterprise, the var binds, and the SNMP agent. We'll see this in a moment. Next slide. Okay, and before we actually go to create the policy, these are questions that you have to ask yourself before you start writing policy. Okay, I have a tool that is sending SNMP traps to SOI. How do I start? Well, what do you want the class of CIs to be when the trap is received and the CI is created? Do you want it to be a computer system? Do you want it to be an application? This is something that you have to ask yourself. When the alert comes in and when the trap is received and the alert's created, it's got to associate itself with the CI within SOI. So when we create the policy, basically, you have to say, well, this is an application or this is a computer system, and we'll write that into the policy. Next thing, how should severity values be mapped to alert severity in SOI? Severity is a required property of an alert. In addition to summary and message. So often var binds will, a single var bind will contain a value that represents that severity. And almost always it won't be a direct mapping to how severities are represented within SOI. So you're not going to have a var bind that says minor, major, critical. More often than not, they'll say low, medium, high, or 1 will be low, 2 will be medium, 3 will be high. So we have to map those within the policy. But you have to pick a place, pick the var bind that holds the severity, and then we can do mappings within the policy, and we'll see that in a moment as well, how we do that. So we have the class, we know how we want to create the severity. Next slide. Okay, probably the most important thing within an alert is the summary and the message. So how do you want the summary and the message to appear? And we just saw how there is a lot of useful data within those var binds, and we saw the var bind that has the message. So you really want to review that alert raw file, determine what var binds are of most importance to you. And here, in this example, we have the .10, and basically we have all the information here. Within the policy, we can combine values within var binds. We can parse out information if there's too much information in a var bind. XML policy is extremely flexible, so there's a lot that we can do within the policy file, but you have to make a determination of where in the trap do I have my summary and where in the trap do I have my message. Next slide. Okay, are alerts clearable? So can the data source send clear traps? So this is another question you have to ask. Some data sources only send traps to notify on exception or threshold breaches, while others have the ability to send clear or normal traps. And then the alerts would be cleared within SOI. So if the data source has the ability to send clear traps, within the policy, we basically set properties, USM properties of alerts and CIs. So this is an important step in the construction of the MDR element ID of the alert. The MDR element ID of the alert is its unique identifier. So every alert has a unique identifier, an MDR element ID, and that could be, generated at random, and it can be some long string that we don't care about if the alert is never cleared. But if it can be cleared, the clear trap has to match that initial critical or warning trap. So MDR element ID has to be unique, but when we get that normal trap, it's got to come in, and the way we set that MDR element ID, it has to match that critical trap or warning, whatever it is that came in first. So not always important, but if you do want them to clear, that MDR element ID is the key to doing that. Next slide. Okay, so we got a lot of good information from turning on debugging. We know the bar binds we want to use. We know how we want to set summary message. We know what bar bind has the severity. Now we can go ahead and create the policy. We know the class that we want to create. Okay, so we're going to actually create a new policy file, a new XML file, and that's stored within the catalog policy extensions directory. So this file, basically, it's used to determine how that raw trap information that we saw in the log file is mapped and formatted into USM properties to actually generate and create the CIs and alerts. Okay, and there's two parts of the policy. We have to put into the policy how we want the CIs created from that trap. Okay, so that's, hey, this is the class I want created. This is how I'm going to populate DNS name and any correlatable attributes and any additional attributes. Second part of the policy is this is how I want my alert created. So, I have a lot of good information in the var binds. This is how I'm going to create my alert. This is what's going to be in the message summary. Any additional user attributes. Next slide. Okay, so let's get into the policy. Okay, so I split it in two, and this is the first half of the policy file, and this is the CI section. And there's basically a couple different parts to it. You see the first, at the top half where I have my red box, there'll always be a classify section. So the classify section is the first section, and its role is to classify the trap and then route it accordingly within the policy. So this is where we use our SNMP_enterprise as the input. So we know what product the trap came from. We'll always use the pattern matching, regex, to match on that var bind value, and then we'll output it to, and in this case I'm outputting it to Blue Stripe CI and outputting it to Applicare CI. So what I'm effectively doing is I'm looking at the SNMP enterprise and I'm saying, hey, this is a Blue Stripe trap. Let me route it to the section within my policy that does my Blue Stripe CI creation. Or hey, this is an Applicare trap. Let me route it and to the section of my policy that does my Applicare CI creation. Okay, so moving down into the middle of the policy, you can see I have my Blue Stripe event class. So I've routed it now to my Blue Stripe event class. I have a format section here. So the format section is always basically, it's always saying this is how I'm going to populate and assign values to the USM properties. And the first thing I will do is set the class name. So this is the class that the CI will be created as, and you can see in this case I'm setting it as a computer system. Now when I make that decision to say this is going to be a computer system, well, there are certain properties that are required for that class, and for every class there are required properties, and for every CI there are what we call correlatable properties that are required, and those correlatable properties are typically the DNS name, IPv4 address that when CIs are coming in from, say, other connectors, they can correlate and come in on that single CI within SOI. So in this case, my Bootstrap trap came in. I routed it to the Bootstrap CI event class. I set it as a computer system, and now I'm setting my properties. My primary DNS name, you can see the input is, and I'm taking advantage of that SNMP underscore agent that I saw in the log file earlier. Remember, that always contains the IP address that sent the trap. And I'm just inputting that, and I'm using a function. There are available functions within XML to do an FQD and look up against that. And I'm putting that into the primary DNS name. I'm doing the same for sysname, computer name. And then I'm simply using the SNMP underscore agent to populate the device IPv4 address. So I'm using those properties that I saw in the log file, and I'm populating what's needed to create the CI. I have other properties, vendor, and in this case, I'm hard coding it with Bluestripe, so that that CI will always have the vendor property of Bluestripe. And you can also put your user attributes, your CI user attributes in here, and populate them. And you can see on the lower half, the applicator event class. I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that we can parse out var binds to pull information. So let's take an example. You saw in the middle how I really took advantage of the IP address that was in SNMP underscore agent. What if it wasn't in there? What if it was blank? What if it had 0.0.0.0? That was no use to me. Well, you can examine your other var binds, and you can see it right in the lower corner. I kind of have a screenshot of that log file, and in the .10 var bind, I have my host name. It's actually buried in that var bind, hostname equals servera.forwardinc.com. I can parse that out. I can pull that out of the var bind within the policy, and then use that to set the primary DNS name, the sys name, the computer name, and you can see that I do that here. I first parse out using regex, output it to a runtime variable, and then I use it to populate other USM properties. So that's the first part, CI creation, and we've done that here. Specify the class name, basically populated the properties. Next slide. Okay, the second half of the policy. Now that we have the CI created, now it's time to create the alert from the trap. At the very top, you'll see exactly the same as within the CI creation. I have a classify block, and it works the same way. I have a trap from applicator come in, Bluestripe in this example. I have to know what product it came from, because I may deal with how I create the alert differently in terms of how I populate the message, the summary, the severity. So I classify, and then I route. So I route it to the applicator or Bluestripe event class. Okay, and it's very similar to the CI creation. I parse out, in this case, this is the applicator alert, and I want to parse out the host name. I know it's in that .10, so I'm parsing it out again. I want to draw attention right in the middle of this policy. And we talked about severity. We need to set severity, but it's almost always not, one-to-one relationship using the USM severities of critical, major, minor. So we have to do a mapping, and that normalized block allows us to do that. That normalized block, we input the var bind, and we're going to output it to severity, and that's the severity property within SOI. But when we input that, we expect to see, when that var bind value comes over, high, medium, or low. That's going to come in from the trap. Well, we have to map that to a SOI severity. So this normalize allows us to do that. Map in high, map out critical, map in medium, map out normal. And we'll almost always use this normalize within the alert section to do the severity mappings. You can pretty much count on that. Okay, and then right below that we have the format section. The same way we did the CI creation, we need to populate required fields for alert creation. So alert and MDR element ID, we're going to populate that with the unique value. And when a trap comes in, a CI gets created. That's the way the SNMP connector works. when we create that CI, it needs a unique identifier or MDR element ID. So that's the unique ID of the CI. Alert will always need an MDR element ID. Remember, that's the unique identifier for the alert. And in this example, I just use the unique identifier function to generate a random string. I don't care about the clear. I'm not getting a normal. I'm not getting a clear chat. Let's just make it unique, and I'm using that function. And then I have some other properties that are familiar with everybody, most likely. The message, the summary. So I'm passing broadband information to that, and also user attributes, and I'm essentially creating that alert. Next slide. Okay, and just about wrapping up, we have just another example. In this case, right at the top, I have a product that sends everything over in a single var bind. So you can see that I have this var bind .100, and in that is the message, the summary. I have my severity in here. There's no other var binds. There's just one. So within the Bootstrap alert event class here, basically in my parse section, I'm parsing everything out. And in my output, you see I output it to Bootstrap summary, Bootstrap severity, Bootstrap alert ID, Bootstrap notes. So, you know, the parsing, very, very flexible, very powerful. You can pull anything out, create it as your own properties that you can then pass in. I'm using the normalize section to do my severity mappings, and then the format section to do my assignments to USM properties, and that's pretty much it. So this is how the SNMP policy creation is pretty much done. We have the parse section normalized in the format to do the assignment. In a nutshell, you know, once you kind of understand that, you can kind of run with it and be creating policy very quickly if you have the var lines that can be used. Next slide. And the final steps, just recycle the connector, and I just want to make note of the log files that would be helpful in debugging, and I recommend using the regex tool. As you saw within the SNMP policy, we really utilize regex to do the parsing, and it's used a lot. So to have one handy to do the testing outside of the the policy itself is recommended, and I use it a lot too. So I just want to wrap it up, and if anybody has any questions about the SNMP connector or has an interest in creating SNMP policy, definitely reach out to me directly. I'd be glad to help you, and I want to pass it over to Dave now.
And before we move on, we did have one question if Windows Server 2012 support is coming.
Yes, I'm sorry, this is Mitch Engel. So 2012 is on our roadmap, and we're looking at what it's going to take to support that now. So yes, it's coming. We don't have a committed date yet, but we'll let you know as soon as we do.
Thank you very much. Dave, take it away.
Sure. Kevin, nice presentation, really great stuff. So I guess I should share my desktop here. Let's try that. Mitch, I think are you going to click, or shall I share my desktop?
I just click, and this way you could walk me through it. Unless there's something different that you have, then I'm happy to give it to you. No,
yeah, just so you can go to the next slide. That'd be great. Yeah, I just want to give everyone a quick view of what's going on at CA World. Certainly, I encourage you, if you haven't really considered it, to go in and look at the agenda under the DevOps area, DevOps, because that's where you're going to find all our infrastructure management related sessions. You'll find application performance management related sessions, and of course service operations insight sessions. And you can also download a PDF that just has kind of a high level agenda as well. But we have descriptions, and they're actually, a number of them are being updated because, and over the next week they'll be updated more because we've had more customers like you volunteer to give presentations. You know, the big theme is about inventing tomorrow. It's about we're an application-driven economy in many ways, whether you're a business or a government organization or a service provider. You know, the whole purpose ultimately of us running operations in IT is to make sure that services like the kind that SOI monitors are delivered. So it's all about supporting applications, and there's going to be a lot about the integration of development and operational processes. That's a big theme also. So thus we have the term DevOps, which, as you know, is really popular in the industry now. So if we go to the next slide, just a little show and tell about how the floor is organized. I'll show you a little more detail, but it's a massive floor. And of course, we've got a huge area for you to schedule one-on-ones with our development team, people like Mitch Engel, who's on the line here, other executives in the business side, product management, etc., and lots of opportunity for you to do networking amongst yourselves. And we've got a big keynote area too, of course. So we can go to the next slide. Just a little more detail. So there is the Ops Center on the left, next to what we're calling the DevOps Theater, and then the Development Center. So, you know, Development Center tools for developing applications, of course. Ops Center, our APM, and our SOI product, and all the many different infrastructure management products. We have demos. We will have sessions there in a main theater and the Ops Center and the DevOps area as well. And we will have off-the-floor sessions. Let me just show you some of the Service Operations Insight related sessions. Start with the next slide. Yes, so actually on Sunday we're having a 3-hour hands-on, we call it Power User Crash course. I believe that most of you on the line are up on a lot of this capability anyway. But you know, take a look at the description. There might be someone else from your organization that you would like to send to this, or you might want to refresh or ask the experts about some of the advanced product capabilities. The first part is kind of an overview of, especially for people who don't know SOI intimately. And although we are doing some new features, as you can see there in part 1, but part 2 is going to get a little deeper, a little more technical, and a good way for you to refresh some of your skills or to have someone really get a good understanding of the product from your organization. Next slide. So that's Sunday, you know, by the way. So there, you should look at the other pre-conference sessions that are listed for Sunday. For example, I'm involved in one for CA Performance Management. You know, that's our next generation large network management product. We'll also be having NIMSOFT sessions and data center infrastructure management, you know, energy management, power management sessions too on Sunday. On Monday, we start a whole series of what we're calling case studies, and our case studies typically, except for 1 or 2, are going to have several customers in them. This is going to be led by Jeff Morris, which you might know, certainly an expert in Service Operations Insight from CA. He's going to give a quick overview of what he's learned and seen by customers like yourselves about best practices for deploying and maintaining SOI. And we'll have 2 great customers talking about their implementations. Unisys is going to talk about, and specifically, how they've modeled their Microsoft Link services, which are critical to their worldwide organization, VoIP versus Microsoft Link. And that's all modeled in Service Operations Insight. Oppenheimer Funds, the major investment firm, is going to be talking about many, many different business critical applications that they have modeled. And a big part of the story is unified event management and using alert queues and policies to ticket and escalate issues via event management. So these are great stories, and it would be good for you to hear what these customers are doing, and then afterwards have a Q&A with them. Next slide. Go to Tuesday. More case studies. This is Lexmark, the worldwide printer manufacturer. They have a business transformation and an IT transformation program going, where they're going from a kind of brick and mortar manufacturing company to also offering their customers online services that help manage the printers that businesses are using from Lexmark. But they have an amazing story, not only from the infrastructure management and the application performance management standpoint, but how they have modeled their top 20 worldwide business processes in SOI. You know, they're very mature approach. Next slide. Okay, we've got a hands-on lab. This is really for, I would say, mainly for beginners. If you have someone who you're sending that doesn't know SOI intimately, this is a short session that would be very helpful for that type of person. Next. Okay, we've got some more case studies. This is really good. This is actually being run by Mitch Engel, and he's going to give an overview of the integration framework to those who are unfamiliar with SOI, but then we will have two case studies, very different and interesting deployments of SOI. Serasa Experian is a major Brazilian financial services company. They've got a good, mature deployment there. And AlphaServe recently, an MSP from New York, recently deployed SOI to integrate MimSoft and Spectrum together. So that is a good story as well, to see what they're doing with MimSoft in managing servers for their customers, their managed service customers, and how they're using Spectrum for correlation and network monitoring and network root cause. So really good story. Next, another case study, Volkswagen, a huge company with a huge story about IT maturity and IT transformation. They use a lot of CA tools and third-party tools, and they're all integrated with Service Operations Insight. They're going to talk a lot about their strategy and how they view IT maturity and how SOI is helping them deliver a very high level of IT maturity. Let's see, next. And actually that's it. So, you know, just a high-level overview. Look at the agenda builder on ca.com and look for these and other real interesting sessions. Thank you.
That was
Dave,
great,
thank you.
David. Thank you. I also would like to point out real quick that in case you're not already following the CA World community, I just wanted to let you know that we do have a community for CA World. So it's a great way to stay on top of what's happening with World. A great presentation today by Mitch, Kevin, and David. Thank you very much. We do only have a few minutes left, but we are available to stay on the phone and answer a few questions. So that does conclude our presentation for today. Please press #6 on your phone if you'd like to ask a question. #6. Okay, so it does not appear like we have any questions. I want to thank everyone very much for taking the time out of your day for joining our community webcast today. We'll be sure to let you know when the next one will be scheduled. You can just take a look at the SOI community overview page, and that's where we will always post our events. Thank you to the team for the presentation today, and thank you to everyone on the line for joining. We appreciate that you took time out of your day to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. We'll see you in a couple months.